Date? March 1st, 2019. Virgil glanced up from his phone as a knock echoed through his room, so he slowly got to his feet and walked towards the door. Opening it, he wasn't surprised to be greeted by Patton's warm smile.
Hey, Virg, can you come downstairs for a bit?
Sure.
Stepping out into the corridor, he couldn't help but notice the way his friend fidgeted with the hoodie thrown around his shoulders.
Is something wrong?
No.
He cast a glance down the stairs.
Logan, Roman, and I just want to talk with you a bit is all.
The response left him wary. Had he done something wrong? Were the others now mad at him? Taking a deep breath, he decided it would be best to go ahead and resolve any issues, so he followed his cheerful counterpart to the first floor. As they reached the common room, he calmed somewhat from the laid-back demeanor that the others portrayed. Logic flipped aimlessly through a textbook, while Princey polished his sword. Still, they both put down their activities as the other two approached, taking their seats on the sofa. For a few moments, they all remained silent, leaving him to wonder if he really had done something wrong, or if he was once again overthinking things. Eventually, he worked up the nerve to speak.
So you guys wanted to talk to me?
Glances passed between them, but they must have come to some form of a decision, because the intellectual soon let his gaze rest on anxiety.
This is a trippy topic to address, but since we have all been trying to understand one another better, something has left us curious for months.
He had no idea where the conversation was going, but the sense of apprehension diminished slightly as he realized the others weren't angry with him.
None of us mean any harm by this question, and we have discussed the best way to phrase it without offending you, and...
I get the point, Specs. Just ask the question.
The one in question rubbed the back of his neck nervously.
What is it like to handle the worries that come with the unknown all of the time?
He lifted one eyebrow.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
As he trailed off, the creative side shot an exasperated glare at the teacher.
What he's trying to ask is, what is it like to be anxious all the time?
He blinked at his colleagues, unsure of how to answer.
Well, the first thing you need to keep in mind is that anxiety isn't just fear. When you face the unknown, as Logan was saying, the fear is mixed with curiosity, but it's often hindered by the need for self-preservation.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow.
The whimsical and kind aspects nodded in agreement. He bit his lip as he thought.
It's not easily explained. The only word I know to describe it is anxiety.
He thought over all the times he had fought with the very trait he embodied.
When there's just fear from, say, a close call, there's a higher level of adrenaline dumped into your system all at once. When you have anxiety, there's just a low level in your system all the time, though it is higher than that of the average person.
Judging from the looks he received, he wasn't doing a very good job at getting his point across.
Okay, for example, Patton, you're afraid of spiders, right?
His eyes grew wide.
Not the creepy crawly death dealers.
I'll take that as a yes.
He trailed off, racking his mind for an analogy.
So, when you see a spider or something like that, you feel scared. That is fear. However, being worried every second of every day that you might see a spider is anxiety. Now apply that same worry of seeing a spider to everything in life, and you'll have a pretty good idea of how it feels to be anxious. Does that make sense?
Slowly, the others shook their heads, forcing him to come up with a new way to try and explain. Over the course of the next hour, he tried countless ways to get the point across, but nothing seemed to work. He attempted making different cases for each of them, broadening the explanation and narrowing it, but nothing seemed to get through to them. He was becoming increasingly frustrated over how to get them to understand what he felt so regularly before an idea entered his mind. It was a devious and manipulative plan, but since just talking had failed him thus far, perhaps a demonstration would be necessary. The only thing that stayed him was the whole idea was tinged with the same mentality he'd had as a dark side. So, he decided to ask.
Do you guys really want to know what it's like to be me?
They all nodded profusely. and he wondered if they would be so quick to agree if they knew what they were getting into. Still, they had given their consent, so he would prove to them what it felt like to always be looking over your shoulder, to be on edge endlessly, and to consider everything to be a threat. He got to his feet, a small smirk lacing his features. Making his way back towards his room, he cast 2 words back to the others.
Watch out.
He was halfway up the stairs before the voice of the visionary facet reached him.
What does that even mean?
The fight-or-flight reflex waited until all 3 of his companions had their eyes locked on him to speak again.
Just watch out.
And with that, he walked out of their field of vision, though he could hear them discussing what he had meant by the phrase. When he got to his room, he began strategically laying out stage 1 of his ploy. Waiting. If this was going to work, as he hoped, he was going to have to lure the others into a false sense of security before enacting the next stage. Thoughts that his actions were reminiscent of who he once was plagued his mind, but he managed to quell them by reminding himself that he wouldn't be hurting his family in any way. It took 3 days for the others to stop questioning him about his warning, but he knew that was just because they understood they weren't going to get anything out of him. No matter how quickly they stopped asking, he had already decided to wait a full week, so that the memory of his warning would be fading, but not completely gone. That being said, for the next 4 days, he just laid low and acted normal. Long after the others had gone to bed on the 7th night, Virgil had everything he needed to begin Phase 2, and since Logan was the deepest sleeper, he would be the first target. Silently, he put everything in place before moving to Patton's room and doing the same. They had been easy enough, but Roman was going to be difficult. He was almost as light of a sleeper as anxiety himself, but since the sleepwalking incidents a year or so back, he wondered if he could still be woken so easily. Roman stretched out an arm to shut off the incessant beeping of his alarm, but his hand didn't strike the hard plastic as he had expected. Instead, the sound of crumbling styrofoam blended with that of the clock. Rolling over, he finally opened his eyes, but he found it hard to believe what he was seeing. His normally pristine room, fit for a prince, was now buried in at least 3 feet of packing peanuts. Sitting up, he realized that there was no escaping the sea of small S-shaped pieces that covered every surface, including his bed. Briefly, he wondered how his corner of the Mind Palace had ended up in such a state, but his attention quickly returned to the beeping of his alarm. Digging through the styrofoam, he eventually uncovered his clock and cut off its piercing sound, leaving the room in silence, save for the settling of foam. Accepting his fate, he threw his covers back, sending packing peanuts everywhere, but as he stood, his foot intersected with something buried in the sea of greenish-white. Moving his hands around just below the surface, he found the top of what felt like a large sheet of cardboard. Turning it around revealed purple lettering that held one message: Welcome to the Mind Palace Prank War. For more information, see Virgil. Now the imaginative character was even more confused. Of all of them, Virgil was the last person he expected to start playing pranks. Still, wanting both answers and his room returned to normal, he started for the door to confront the culprit. It wasn't until he stepped into the hall with a wave of foam that he realized the same joke had been played on both the logical and moral attributes, which elicited soft laughter from the one waiting for them in the corridor.
What is the meaning of this?
Logan appeared particularly angered by the joke.
How am I supposed to get any work done when my desk is covered in packing peanuts?
I don't know what you're so worked up about. This is fun.
Patton threw handfuls of the stuff into the air.
Look, it's snowing.
Roman, on the other hand, merely trained his eyes on his negative counterpart, who wore a small smile that served to unnerve him. Once he obtained the attention of his 3 victims, anxiety spoke with the slightest hint of amusement in his tone.
Welcome to the Mind Palace Prank War.
Logic appeared as confused as Princey had been.
What is the purpose of such an activity?
The one in question chuckled softly.
You all wanted to know what it's like to be me, and since I couldn't get that across in words, I decided I would show you how it felt. Over the course of the next month or so, you will learn what it feels like to always be looking over your shoulder, always suspecting those around you to be at fault, and wondering if you yourself have gone too far.
Don't you think this could get a little out of hand, Kid Virg?
Patton glanced around at them.
We can all be a little competitive, and to some extent vengeful. How will we know how far is too far?
The darker figure smiled.
Now you're beginning to think more like me. But I expected that question. So, listen closely, because there are a few rules I've come up with to keep us from hurting one another.
He pulled a piece of paper from one of his pockets and looked it over briefly.
First and foremost, no prank is to be played if the sole intent for it is to injure someone. Next, if an unexpected injury occurs from a prank, the one who pulled the prank is to apologize immediately, and no one holds a grudge. Third, don't break or mess up anything you can't replace. And fourth, everyone is required to participate.
The intellectual straightened his glasses.
And what if we refuse to partake?
Patton said it himself. We can all be a bit competitive and vengeful.
They locked eyes in a silent battle for a moment before he continued.
If you don't partake, you will still get pranked, with no chance of returning the favor to the one who got the best of you.
He waited, as if expecting a response, but none was made.
And finally, I make the final call on if any new rules are put into place. You may approach me with a new idea, but since the whole purpose of this prank war is for you to understand what my life is like, I doubt I will add many.
The fanciful persona picked up a fistful of the packing peanuts, finally breaking the silence.
Then wouldn't the rules be, you make the mess, you clean it up?
His friend appeared thoughtful for a moment.
Yes, but there's a catch to that rule. There is no time limit on when the mess must be cleaned up.
He smiled at the sea of foam.
For example, I could choose to make this mess go away in 5 minutes, 5 hours, or keep it here until the end of the prank war.
The others just stared at him.
This will be the one and only time in this whole ordeal that I will show you mercy. Seeing as you weren't aware of the rules until now, I'll go ahead and clean up this mess. But I might not be so gracious further down the line.
Snapping his fingers, the packing peanuts glowed purple for a moment before disappearing altogether.
Welcome to the prank war. I'm curious to see what you all come up with.
Date, March 3rd, 2019. Logan glanced at his desk. If he was going to be forced to partake in this prank war, as Virgil had called it, he was going to win. Throughout the day, the others had all been busy with chores and other activities, which had given him the perfect opportunity to begin his own revenge. Quickly, so as not to be caught, he had gone into the other corners of the mindscape, borrowing his colleagues' laptops. All of them had PCs, which were easy enough to hack into, leading him to the prank itself. He had moved all of their information and settings onto separate external hard drives before restoring all of their laptops to factory settings. The hard drives would return the owner's laptop to all of its proper settings as soon as it was connected, but for the time being, he was going to hang on to those. As swiftly as he had gathered them, Logic went from room to room and returned all of the computers in nearly the same state he had collected them in. It wouldn't be until they went to use them that his companions would realize what he had done. Moving back to his own room, he put his focus back on his work, waiting to hear just how angry the others would get at the loss of all their data. It was nearly an hour before he heard the rest of his family turn in for the night, but it was only a matter of minutes before he heard the first voice.
What? Where are all my pictures of puppies?
He suppressed a smile. So that was what currently resided on the light blue hard drive. He heard the sound of a door being opened, followed by an angry shout.
Whoever erased all of the scripts from my computer, you are going to have to type them all back up so I can rehearse.
Now he knew what was most important to Roman, something he would have to keep in mind for later use. Still, nothing compared to the one he was actually aiming for, Virgil.
What are you two yelling about?
Our computers have been wiped.
The prince paused briefly.
Was this you?
No, it wasn't me.
Anxiety trailed off for a moment.
Hold on. Let me go check if my computer's been reset too.
After a minute or two, He nearly jumped out of his skin at the shout of the youngest side.
Logan, so help me if you don't have the information on my computer backed up.
Getting to his feet, he walked over to the door. Glancing out of it, he saw his 3 comrades.
I'm sure I have no idea what you're talking about.
Morality looked as if he were close to tears.
I had so many pictures and memories of us on my computer. Even if you didn't pull the prank, please tell me that there is some way to get them back.
I'm not certain.
He was certain.
Did you have any of the data backed up to a cloud or an online source such as email?
No.
His friend sniffled slightly.
Is there any other way to get it back?
Well, what seems to be the issue with your laptop, perhaps it is something reversible.
The fanciful trait was quick to round on him.
Stop playing dumb, Logan, and admit that you reset all of our computers to factory settings.
He gave a fake look of confusion.
I am never dumb, and I have done nothing of the sort. However, if your computers have been restored to factory settings, I'm afraid there is nothing to do about the loss of the information.
If looks could kill, the fight-or-flight reflex would have been his murderer.
You are the only one with enough technical know-how to do this. Besides, you're the only one whose computer is unaffected.
Continuing to glare, he spoke once more.
You've also broken one of the rules, which is not to break or mess up anything you can't replace.
The 2 of his colleagues looked ready to kill him. It was the soft sobbing from the eldest aspect that caused him to cave in.
Honestly, you 3, how can you fall for something like this?
Still crying, Patton looked at him hopefully through his tears.
So you can get all of those memories back.
Yes, and the scripts, and whatever it is that Virgil was missing.
He glanced back to his room.
I didn't exactly look at what was on your computers. I just wiped them.
How exactly do you plan on giving us all of that back?
He didn't notice who asked the question, as he was already returning to his room when it was asked. Gently, so as not to damage them, he took the 3 external hard drives from their place on his desk and returned to the corridor.
Each of these holds one of your computer's data. I even took the liberty of color-coding them for you.
As he spoke, he handed the red one to Roman, light blue to Patton, and purple to Virgil.
If you plug those into your computers, you'll find all of your data and settings restored automatically.
The negative facet, who still had his laptop in his hands, plugged it in, and sure enough, it came up with his password screen. He typed something in, and his desktop screen came up the same as when Logan had taken it.
I gotta say, that was a pretty good prank, Specs. You actually had me going there for a second. I thought I was gonna have to replace the near terabyte of music I have on here.
He chuckled slightly.
But the joke's on you. All of my prank ideas are on here, and you didn't look at a single one of them.
Grinning, anxiety returned to his corner of the mind palace, leaving logic to call after him.
I want that external hard drive back!
Oh, you'll get it back, once I wipe it of all my data.
Date? March 4th, 2019. Patton glanced around, wondering how he was going to join in on the prank war. Everything he could think of just seemed mean to him, and he didn't want to upset anyone. Still, Virgil had made it explicitly clear that everyone needed to participate, and he did want to come to a better understanding with his friend. And if this was the way to do it, he was willing to. The others were in the movie room currently, but Morality had elected not to watch the horror movie they had selected, so it was the best time to set up a prank. Suddenly his eyes rested on the DVD cases, sitting near the entertainment center. More often than not, Roman and Virgil would watch musicals in the Commons, so they left the DVDs there. He smiled, as a harmless but annoying joke entered his mind. If he were to switch all of the DVDs to different cases, they would have a difficult time choosing what movie to watch next. Sitting on the floor, he looked over to the clock. He probably had close to 2 hours to finish his task, and with the copious amount of musicals and Disney movies they owned, it was going to take a while. He sighed as he finally stacked all of the cases back in their place. None of them had their proper disc inside anymore, but at least the cases themselves were tidy. To make it seem as if he hadn't done anything, he headed to the kitchen and began doing the dishes, waiting for the others to finish their movie. Putting on a pair of gloves, he got to work. It was only about 10 minutes before he heard voices coming from down the hall.
What should we watch next?
Anxiety's tone answered Princey's question.
Not another horror film. We should watch something that Patton feels comfortable watching with us.
He smiled softly, but he suddenly felt bad. They were all being so considerate, and he had just pranked them. Before he could ponder it further, the others walked into the kitchen, and this time it was the creative side who spoke.
Hey, Pat, do you want to watch a movie with us?
Sure.
He did his best not to let his guilt bleed into his tone.
What movie were you guys thinking?
Logan glanced over the shoulders of the other two.
Well, we got to choose the last movie, so it'd only be fair if you got to choose this one.
The other two nodded in agreement, but rather than feeling grateful, fear clawed at his throat, because the only movies he usually watched with the others were musicals or Disney. He merely shrugged, but the trait dressed in black and purple didn't seem convinced.
You alright? You look a bit pale.
I just don't really know what to watch.
The other two seemed to buy into what he said, but the youngest of his sons still looked skeptical. Roman started for the pile of DVDs that he had just arranged, and he wanted to stop him, but that would give away what he had done even faster, so he stayed where he was. He picked up the case for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which held the disc for Mary Poppins, and the father figure held his breath as he opened it.
Hey, Virg, did you put Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in the wrong case after you watched it a while back?
The one in question shook his head.
I thought you were the last one to watch that movie.
I thought so too, but I'm pretty diligent about putting the movies back in their right cases.
The statement sent a shiver down his back. Had he gone too far? Just as the thought entered his mind, the fanciful aspect picked up the Mary Poppins case, but pulled out the disc for West Side Story.
Hold on. What?
He felt a sob clawing at his throat, but before he could make a sound, the fight-or-flight reflex walked over with a laugh. He picked up the case for Phantom of the Opera, but moments later had the disc for Aladdin in his hand. For a moment, he seemed too riddled with laughter to speak.
Who switched all the DVDs?
Realization dawned in the eyes of the one who was still digging through the cases.
Oh, it's a prank. I thought I just really messed up in putting the movies away.
The prince sat in the middle of a bunch of DVD cases, giggling, while Virgil, who was still laughing, turned to face the others. His expression dropped as his gaze rested on him, though.
Patton, are you alright? You look like you're about to fall over.
He stopped abruptly, taking him by the arm and leading him into the other room.
Take a deep breath, calm down, and tell me what's going on.
It wasn't until he spoke that the eldest Facet even realized he was shaking, but the other had been as poignant as ever, picking up on the small detail when even he hadn't. Anxiety put his hand on his shoulder as he sniffled.
It was just a prank. I didn't mean to upset you guys.
That's what this is about?
He took a deep breath.
Patton, let me ask you something. Did your prank hurt anyone?
He shook his head slightly.
Okay. Is your prank irreversible?
He shook his head again.
Then there's nothing to worry about. Both Roman and I found it funny.
He choked back a sob.
But Roman said...
That's just because he was confused at first. That's normally the first reaction to most pranks.
The darker character smiled at him.
If you're still not convinced, this prank is nowhere near as mean as Logan returning all of our computers to factory settings.
Are you sure?
I know you well enough to know you didn't break any of the discs. So everything is fine.
Morality didn't meet his gaze.
Here, I'll prove it.
He walked into the other room.
Hey guys, what'd you think of the DVD prank?
This was you?
He could hear the whimsical attribute laughing.
Good one, Virg.
I wish I could take credit for it.
Wait, it wasn't you?
Logic sounded confused.
Who was it then?
Before I tell you, can you confirm that this was a funny prank?
Roman's voice rose into the quiet.
I think it's funny. Definitely better than Logan's computer prank.
That's what I said.
He slowly stepped to where the others could see him.
See, Patton? No one's mad at you for this.
He wiped his eyes as Princey walked over.
Hat, it's a prank war. There's no need to be upset.
He didn't respond.
Okay, if you're still upset, let's go watch a movie. It's like pressing a random button now.
Virgil walked over to the stack and pulled a random one. The case was for Beauty and the Beast.
Let's see what this one holds.
He opened it slowly, as if to add suspense.
Hey! I found the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang DVD.
Both he and Roman laughed, patting him on the shoulder.
Well, I guess we're watching Chitty Chitty Bang Bang then.
Glad that he hadn't upset the others, he followed closely in their wake to watch the film that destiny had chosen for them.